So we email this to you, and we advise you delete the email afterwards. And also, once you're moving from dev to live, we also advise you change your keys, so your dev site stops working, so you're not by mistake creating transactions on there. When you create your advanced integration, by default, it's in test mode. When in test mode, all the messages work exactly as if you're running live, but when you make payment, you don't have the EcoCash, Visa, Zim switch options. Instead, you just have testing fake success. So either you can click cancel payment, or you can select testing fake success and click make payment, and then your site will get back a message and the customer will get redirected back as if you had made a successful payment. To stop people doing this by mistake, when you're in testing mode, only your merchant account can do this. If any other account tries to use your site, they'll just be told that you're in testing and they can't make payment. So it's important when you're testing and you're getting messages that you can't make payment, it's because you're not logged in as the merchant who owns the integration. Obviously no money moves, so you can sit and test backwards and forwards, and you don't have to worry about, oh, I don't have a Visa card or I don't have EcoCash. It doesn't make a difference. You can test away and do as many transactions as you want. Okay. So, now we can get to the code. Let's first of all do a couple of questions, and then either we can have a 10-minute break or we can carry on depending on how everyone feels. Has anyone got any questions at this point? Yeah.
How do I integrate Paynow with
mobile apps? The Paynow site is responsive, so when you redirect the customer to Paynow, they can make payment. However, your mobile app will need to be talking back to your system, because you need to receive the confirmations the payment has happened. So the model would be that your mobile app, the customer would select right, make payment. The mobile app would talk to your server would create the transaction with Paynow and give you back a URL to redirect the customer. You would send that back to the phone. That would then redirect to the customers, to Paynow. They'd use the responsive version of Paynow to make payment and redirect back to your site. Your site then needs to confirm the payment has happened and then return the user to the mobile app. So you do need your own back-end system to handle the payments, because otherwise you're not going to know what's happened. Having said that though, if you want to use something basic like a payment button or the basic shopping cart hosted in Paynow, then obviously you don't need a back-end system, because then it's going to go straight from the app into Paynow without ever talking to your system. Is there any other questions? Okay. Do you want a 10-minute break, or should we get started on some of the code? Maybe to keep going? Yep. Okay. We've set up here a server at Hypercube Hub, and we'll leave it here for in the future, so that people who don't have access to like a public IP address or a development server or something like that can come to Hypercube Hub and can integrate with the Paynow test server. You can get to it on the local IP address, which I'll put up at the end. It's 192.168.100.187. You can connect to that, and then you can just use your local internal IP address to get messages in and out. To get onto the Hypercube Wi-Fi, to be able to access that network, just connect to Hypercube Hub, and that's the password. So if you don't get finished today, as I say, we will leave the server here, and you can come back at any time and test away. We have some developer resources that you can use. The first is on paynow.co.zw/home/developers, and we have all the documentation on there. We'll give all these out after the presentation. We also have a website, developers.paynow.co.zw, which is a WordPress site that Takura in the back made, explaining how to integrate from PHP and C#. And you can also find downloads there for already built modules for easy digital downloads, VirtuaMart, WooCommerce, and OpenCart. So if you use any of those, you can just install them, you're good to go. There's no need to do any development at all. Okay, we'll come back to this. Let's start with generating links. So this is the developer documentation that's available on the site, and I'll just run through this with you. Okay, so either you can log in and generate a payment email like I showed you. Anyone can do that, no development required. Or you can choose to generate those links yourself and embed them in your own systems. To do that, you create a link to paynow.co.zw/payment/link. You can then optionally supply the customer's email. If you do, it'll automatically log them in as a guest. If they have an account, then obviously it'll ask them for their password to log in properly. But most of your customers won't have an account in Paynow because they're not receiving money. So it's just a nice user experience to provide the email address, because then they get taken straight to the make payment page. After the email address, question mark Q query equals, and then this argument, which we'll show you how to construct now. So the argument is formatted like normal HTML query strings. So you do that, then you base64 encode it, and then URL encode it. The fields you use, the first field is called search, and that is your merchant email address. It's how we're going to identify you. What we're actually doing with this URL is circumventing the whole process of someone searching for you via the email address. This is why your server doesn't have to send a message to Paynow first to create the transaction. This URL is just going to effectively search for you and generate a transaction within the client's browser. So then you'll enter the amount, you enter a reference number, and you'll have the letter L for locked, whether you want the form to be locked or not. As I said, it's not 100% secure, it's not intended to be 100% secure. If you do want the secure one, you have to go the whole API route. So after you've built up your query string, you'll then URL encode each of the variables and concatenate them together like a normal HTML query. You base64 encode that, and then you URL encode the base64 string and build up your full URL and click, you're ready to go. Any questions on generating that link? No? Okay, the next option, as I said, is the advanced template. In this case, you do need to go and build the template in Paynow first, selecting what each data type in each field is, etc. And then the process is very similar to before. Instead of searching by email address, in your message you're going to specify the ID of the template that you have gone and created. When you create the template, it shows you the ID there. Specify the amount, specify a quantity if you're using quantity, again whether it's locked, and then your fields are labeled F1, F2, F3, etc. in the same order that the fields are shown in the template. So you build up your string in the same way. See from this example, I build up the string in the same way. I base64 encode it, a URL encode it, and we're good to go. When the customer clicks that, they can now they'll now be taken to the template with all the data filled in. You can obviously use this in emails from your website. You know, anywhere you can pretty much generate an HTML link, mobile apps, etc. And that's what the final URL will look like that the customer will be taken to. Okay, so when a customer makes payment in these simple ways, the only way you're getting notified is via an email to your registered email address. However, you can fill in, if you go and edit the template in advanced mode, you can go and fill in a notification URL, a success URL, and a cancelled URL. The notification URL we will do an HTTP post to with all the fields the customer's filled in, so that you can use that to update your records. We'll redirect the customer back to a success URL if they make payment, or we'll redirect them back to a cancelled URL if they don't make payment. So when using the notification URL, the fields that we'll post back to you are Paynow reference, customer name, customer email, customer phone, transaction amount and amount paid. Basically, the difference between transaction amount and amount paid is if you opt for the customer to pay the charges, the amount paid will be more than the transaction amount. Then we have a hash and any extra fields that you added to the template. So the extra fields are just named the same thing you named them in the template. We just replace any spaces with underscores. Now the hash. The point of the hash is 1, to prove that this message is coming from Paynow, and 2, to prove that the data hasn't been edited in flight to your server. How you generate the hash that's just an example of what the extra fields would look like. Okay, so it's very important when you receive a post to your notification URL that you do validate that the hash matches the one we send you. So what you do is you first concatenate all the fields in the post that you receive in the same order that you receive them. So you'll go name value, name value, name value in the same order that we sent them to you. No separator in between, just name value, name value. You take that string, you append your integration key, which is the one that you generate in Paynow, and just click email this to me. You append your key at the end of the string you've generated. UTF-8 encode that and create a 5 SHA-12 hash. So basically, if that value should now match the hash value that we send you. If it doesn't, ignore the message. And here's some examples in the documentation which you can go over of how to generate a base64 URL. That example's in C#. We do have, basically, myself and James mainly work in C#, but Willie and Takura are PHP developers, so they'll be able to help you if you have any questions in those languages. I can kind of help you in Java. Sorry if it's Ruby or Perl or something. We're just going to have to do a lot of Googling. Okay, so that's the basic way of integrating from your website to Paynow without going through the whole server infrastructure. Are there any questions on that before we move on? Okay, so now the main one that you guys are probably interested in, the one that gives you the most power, is the API. And the architecture of the API is you have your merchant site, which will make a call to Paynow. It's very important this doesn't go through the client's browser. You should never send anything through the client's browser except the browser URL that we give you back. So your server talks to Paynow, sends through information about the transaction. We reply back with various information, such as the browser URL and the poll URL. We'll go through this in more detail. You then redirect the client's browser to Paynow using the browser URL. Customer makes payment. Paynow then announces back to your server the result of that transaction and redirects the customer's browser back to your site. There's a couple of important things to note there. You should, when the customer gets redirected back, you should poll Paynow for a status. You can't rely on our notification telling you the status, arriving before the customer or arriving at all. You know, there might be network problems. On top of that, you should be quite, even if the hash keys and everything are correct, you should be quite skeptical about any message that gets posted to you. Obviously you need to acknowledge it and you need to act on it, but it's always better whenever you receive a post or receive a customer redirect back to your site that you poll Paynow. It'll send back the same results, but it's much better that you ask for it than you just rely on things getting sent to you. Okay, so there's a separate API doc to explain how to do the third-party site integration. It runs through the setup, which we've already discussed, and the system layout. So, the first, can you read that? Is that alright there? You need to zoom it a bit. How do you... Okay. So the first thing you're going to do is from your server, you're going to call interface initiate transaction on Paynow. And you're going to provide it with the ID, which is your integration ID that we got earlier when we created the API integration. Your internal reference, we don't check that. We don't check that it's unique or anything. It's your own reference. It's just for you. The amount. Optionally, you can supply additional info. That's just plain text info that we'll display on the transaction if you want to describe the product or something. A return URL. This is the URL that we will redirect the customer back to once they have completed the transaction. And a result URL. The result URL is the one we are going to post status update results to your site. Then you can optionally supply the auth email. That's that email address that will automatically log in a guest user. Then specify a status, which at this stage should be set to message. And then you've got your hash. If the transaction was created successfully and everything was fine, Paynow will reply back to you with a browser URL. That is the URL you must redirect the client's browser to. A poll URL, that is the URL you can use to poll at any time. So it's important when you managing your transactions in your system that you don't do things like, oh well, I haven't had a status update on this transaction